Hello, and welcome to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, the Outdoorsy Diva. Thanks for joining. Hello, adventurers. So happy to have you here on this wonderful day of episode 18. Thank you so much for joining and riding with me. I'm loving all the feedback and the interactions that I'm getting via email at podcast@outdoorsydiva.com. So please keep those coming. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I'm so glad that you all seem to be enjoying it too. So today we are going to talk about how to add more adventure to your already busy life. Yep, that's one of the really common ones that I get. I get a lot of feedback from people who always want to know, hey, Lauren, it always seems like you're going here, you're going there, you're going to this place, you're exploring this park, you're taking another trip. Geez, girl, you going somewhere again? That's the feedback that I get. Sound familiar to some of you? Well, yes, I am always on the go, but I do make time for downtime as well. But the most common question that I get is, how do I do it? How do I find time to have all of this adventure in such a very busy life? So I'm going to help you out with that today. I have a lot of tips. Honestly, I could probably start a whole class on how to be more adventurous, right? But today I aim to share with you 3 of those tips on how you can have more adventure in your busy life, doing things that you already do. You're going to take advantage of the time that you already spend, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get into it. While you may not consider yourself someone who is a frequent traveler, I would venture to say that for the most part, at some point or another, many of us have a reason to travel. This could be because of work, for a work assignment, you have a business trip of some kind. This could be something to do with your church. Maybe you have a convention or something that you're going to. You may end up traveling for a convention of some kind for an organization that you belong to. Maybe it's for your Greek letter organization or for some other association that you're a part of, but you do plan to go to that annual or biannual conference. But the most common reason that many of us have to travel is, drumroll please, weddings. Yep, the proverbial vacation PTO suck. Taking time off of your job and going to someone else's nuptials, be it friend or family, just part of the job, right? And don't get me wrong, I think weddings are beautiful. I think they are a wonderful, momentous occasion worth celebrating. But there have been years where I have had to attend like literally 10 or more weddings. And that's a lot, especially if your friends are spread all over and you find yourself constantly having to travel. And especially if you have to take time off of work to attend those weddings, because, you know, we live in America where we only have set amount of time off. And God forbid you poor people who don't have paid time off because either you know, your job doesn't allow for that or you're self-employed. So when you don't work, you don't get paid. So that's a huge sacrifice for you to take time off of your job to go and celebrate with someone else. So while it's a great reason to have to travel, right, to go to someone's wedding or baby shower or work or family obligation, whatever that reason is that you have to travel, why not start to think about it differently, right? If you're going to have to already take this time away from your job, away from your day-to-day responsibilities, why not go ahead and make the trip worthwhile? Meaning, in addition to whatever the obligation is, you know, it's your family reunion or your aunt's 70th birthday celebration, whatever the occasion is, that's fine. But why don't you look for a way to expand that trip a bit? So if you have the additional time and you can add a couple more days off to the trip, great. do that. Do that. Look for something nearby that you haven't done before that you can experience either by yourself or with your family. And there's so many options, guys. And I don't just mean like theme parks, right? You could explore a nearby state park. There could be even a national park possibly near you. As an example, I just traveled to Montana to attend the TBEX travel conference, and it's in Montana. I looked at the map and I said, whoa, this is pretty close to Yellowstone. Bucket list, ding, ding, ding. So that was like an automatic for me that no matter what for this trip, I absolutely 100% had to make time to make sure that I could go and explore this park because it's so close. I mean, it'd be ridiculous. And when I say close, that's relative, right? To me, I consider close, under 3 hours. To me, that's close. Depending on what it is and how bad I want to see it, I feel like that is a reasonable drive that I wouldn't mind making. I look for stuff. The sweet spot, I feel like is 2 hours because that's a drive I can make there and back, and I don't necessarily have to make plans for additional accommodation to wherever it is I'm going to see. But if it's somewhere that I want to spend more time, like Yellowstone, then sure, that's, it was worth it for me to make additional accommodations so that I could actually spend a couple of days exploring that park and exploring the area. So that's something to consider is, a state park or a national park. Is there a beach close by that you haven't been to before? Is there some historical site of significance nearby? And what are the tools you can use to help you figure out what's by you to explore? Even in a city that you've been to before. And that's what I want you to remember, especially when we travel for family obligations. So my hometown is Dallas, Texas. Even though I live in Tampa, Florida now, my hometown is Dallas, Texas. D-Town, stand up. Always going to be a D-Town girl, right? At heart. Always going to be a Dallas girl. Always going to rep for Texas. Always going to rep as a Texas girl. But do I know everything that there is to do in my hometown? Absolutely not. And since I only get home once a year, if I'm lucky, every other year is the norm, then things change, things get added all the time. Not to mention, there are so many things like I don't get to do as a tourist because when I come home, it's all about family and friends and making the rounds. And I rarely get a chance to really enjoy that city as a tourist unless I intentionally build in that extra time that will allow me to do that. So don't think because it's a city that you frequent often because maybe that's where you're from and that's where you have a lot of family, that it means there won't be anything nearby or worth doing. So the tools that you can use to help you find something to do for that extended trip. Easiest, Google Maps. I have literally just pulled up the phone, done the little location dot, doop, shows me where I am, and then discovered like, oh, wow, look, this is here. I didn't know this was this close. I remember my son and I traveled to Ohio for a trip up to the Lake Erie shores and islands, and I had to rent a car anyway. Well, as we were passing through in Cleveland, we spent a little time in the area and decided that I wanted to see if there were any waterfalls nearby because that's kind of my thing, love chasing waterfalls. So that was an easy search, and I literally found that looking on Google Maps. Looked at the map, waterfalls showed up, realized how close it was, did it. Same thing happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I went for another TBEX convention that year and looked up waterfalls near Minneapolis on Google search. Really easy. Pulled it up on the map, saw it was a couple of train stops away. Boom, easy, done. Adventure added that I would have not ordinarily been able to have. I would have only done the conference, but this allowed me to go and explore a whole other area of the city. And it's a massive, beautiful waterfall in this urban park, which was like really weird to me to see. You don't usually see waterfalls of that magnitude in an urban setting, but lo and behold, they have a city park with this major waterfall in it, and it was absolutely beautiful and totally worth that detour for the day. So Google Maps, google.com, very simple, just to look and see what's close to you in your area. Then TripAdvisor. Now, y'all know I love me some TripAdvisor. Shameless plug. Full disclosure, yes, I am a TripAdvisor affiliate. And if you do access TripAdvisor via my website, outdoorsdiva.com, yes, I do get a little bit of commission, but that's it. But I used TripAdvisor long before I was ever an affiliate. And I use it because it works. It's a great tool. You get to hear from actual real life people about places they've gone and what the experience was, and see real life pictures of what it looks like, and see people's ratings. And of course, you take things with a grain of salt. I always look at the good ratings, and then I always go down to the worst ratings to look at those and see, obviously, were these legitimate concerns, and how did the business address it? Or, are these just the weirdos in the bunch that you can never please? Because those people do exist, and you can kind of ignore those. But TripAdvisor, great way to just plug in where you are, the location, and it's going to automatically give you a numbered list of recommended attractions that you can consider doing for the day with your family. It's going to tell you where it is, how much it costs, what the hours are, what people thought of it. All the information that you need is going to be right there at your fingertips to help you make your plans. Another way, look for the tourism site. Most cities have a tourism board. You can go to their website, and they might have things like a recommended 1-day itinerary if you're short on time, or a 2-day itinerary. They may also offer some type of deal on a city pass that will allow you to experience different things in the area, like museums, at a discounted rate. Yelp is also another tool that you can use to help you find activities in your area. And then, of course, there's always word of mouth, other friends that you can ask. And then my favorite, Pinterest. You can use Pinterest. Look up Pinterest. There's an app, real easy, on your phone. Type in where you are, and you should easily get all kinds of pins about things to do in XYZ destination, or quick itineraries for this destination. And it's just a really easy way to add on some additional time. Another example I'll give you of when I've personally done this, just to show you that it really does work. So I had to travel back to Texas for my aunt's 70th birthday a couple of years ago. My son and I made the trip, and it happened to fall during our spring break time. Well, at the time, with him still being in school, as you know, you have very limited amount of time that your child is able to be out of school. And so you try to take advantage of that. And so since this fell during our spring break time, I decided I'm going to extend this trip. So yes, we'll fly in. We'll go to my aunt's party. Then I'm going to rent a car, and then we're going to drive somewhere else and actually go have us a for real little vacation during his spring break. So I ended up finding these really cute cabins. We did a little glamping trip down in Texas Hill Country near Lake Travis area, which is just outside of Austin. And this is an area I had never explored. I had never been to Texas Hill Country as a kid. We visited Perdido State Park. They had waterfalls. We swam in rapids. We went to the Hamilton Pool Falls, which I had never seen. Didn't even know springs like this existed in Texas because I had never been to that part of the state as a kid growing up. And it was an awesome trip. We had a great time. And this is all because I decided to capitalize on an event that I was already obligated to attend for my family, but also make it work for us. I wanted to plan something for us to do for spring break anyway, so I just decided to do something that geographically made sense. So that is one quick way that you can go ahead and add a little bit more adventure. Take those trips for friends and for family or for work obligations, and if you can, add a little bit more time. But if you don't have more time, you can definitely just find things nearby to do and work that into your schedule of activities to do while you are there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you can invite your friends and family to come along with you, or not, depending on, how well you get along with them. Maybe you just want to get away, but either way, it's okay. My second piece of advice for how you can add more adventure to your already busy life. Detours. Add detours and scenic routes to wherever you are going. So, for example, let's say you had, somewhere else to go. You put in Google Maps, right? That's what most of us do, and you get your directions. Google is going to give you the shortest route based on time, but you can look at your map, look and see if there are other things you'd like to see, and plan a more scenic route to where you were already going anyway. So if you had to take, a drive that maybe would ordinarily just take you 2 hours to go somewhere, this was already on your plan and your list of things to do, why not look at the map and see if there's something else nearby? Go on Google, see if there's something else you can hit on your way that's gonna make a trip you are already going to take worthwhile for you. An example of this, I went to Fort Lauderdale for a friend's wedding. And on my way back up, I decided that instead of just taking the normal humdrum, I take the drive down I-75 through Alligator Alley. There's really nothing great to see there, honestly. I decided that on my way back up, I'd go up the East Coast and go up 95 and then hop off on the A1A highway, which goes literally along the actual coast, and drive through all these coastal towns. And just if I saw things that were interesting, I would stop. And if I didn't, I'd keep going. What a great decision. Yes, it added a couple of hours to my drive, but it was such a great drive. I mean, I drove along. If there were places I could stop and get out and see the ocean, then I did. I stopped at all these different beaches I had never been to or even heard of. I found this beach called Blowing Rocks Preserve, which is absolutely beautiful near the Jupiter area, and it's an outcropping of limestone rock that we have right here in Florida that I didn't even know existed. And down below, when the tide is out, it creates caves, and you can walk along the beach there and explore the tidal pools. It's like really, really cool. And then when the water comes back in with the tide, it rushes up underneath these outcroppings and up through the holes of the rocks, and hence it's got the name Blowing Rocks. And it is an absolute marvel, and it looks nothing like any Florida beach that I've ever seen. And I'm so glad that I took this detour to find it. I also stopped at a state park while I was over there that I had never heard of, and it was on the water, and it was beautiful, and I saw manatees and all kinds of critters. It's a great way to just kind of get lost without getting lost. I mean, you're right there on the coast and you're in these little towns. It's not like you're gonna really get lost and not be able to find your way back. But what a great way to explore a part of your state that maybe you're unfamiliar with or that you've never been to. So if you already have a road trip planned somewhere, instead of just taking the shortest route, if you have the time, take a more scenic route, maybe on your way home when you have a little more flexibility, or on your way there, just doing what makes the most sense, and stop off and see what you see. Honestly, even taking I-75, you literally pass right through the Everglades. And for a long time, I kept saying, I want to stop. And finally, one year I did. I had to drive to Miami for something, and I did. I pulled over at a couple of places where I was actually able to go and see, actual parts of the Everglades that I had never experienced before. So it's a really easy way. This is tip number 2, again, have a detour, take a more scenic route, because you just never know what you may find, and it's totally worth the time. And my third and final tip for this episode on adding more adventure to your already busy life is Look for deals. Use deals to your advantage. Now, you can find deals these days in some of everywhere related to any type of travel or activities. Some of my favorites are Groupon, Living Social, Viator, which is also now owned by TripAdvisor, and even the airlines themselves have all kinds of deals. So, for example, JetBlue just launched a fare sale for a couple of days in October, and they have one ways for like $31 or something like that. You know, the airlines do this kind of thing all the time. We typically have a tendency to look at it, then we go look for the cities or where it's flying from, and then it's like, oh man, I don't see anything for my city. Are you sure? Because if you live in a major city and you have that luxury, then you're probably within an hour or two drive of another major or regional airport where maybe they do have these discounted flights from. And if it's cheap enough, then it may be worth the drive. So for $31, will I drive an hour to fly out of Orlando? Heck yeah. And lo and behold, they didn't have flights from Tampa. They did have flights from Orlando. They also had flights from Fort Myers, which is a little bit further away. But again, depending on where I'm flying to, and if I have the time, sure, maybe it's worth it for me to make that drive for such a cheap flight. It just depends on what you're trying to do. The other thing that we typically don't do when we look at deals like this that come up is, okay, maybe let's say you do find an airport near you, but then you look and you see, oh man, look at these cities. None of these are anywhere that I was planning to go. Keyword planning. But so what? All of your adventures don't have to be planned out in places that you quote unquote always wanted to see, right? You can plan those trips, but this is about adding adventure and taking advantage when the opportunity presents itself. So when a friend of mine posted about where these flights were going, I looked and I saw, oh, they're going to Rhode Island. They're going to Albany, New York. And I believe the other one was Syracuse, New York, all out of Orlando, right? And off top, Rhode Island, Albany, Syracuse, those three places aren't exactly jumping out at you as places to go, right? But immediately my brain was like, oh, but wait, this is for the fall. So duh, fall leaves, fall foliage. I live in Florida. I don't really get the seasons change. Maybe this could be a fun, quick weekend getaway. So let me see. I look up Albany, New York, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I could go up there, go to upstate New York, short drive to Vermont, just next door, rent a car, go through the Green Mountains, see fall foliage, hit some waterfalls. Boom. You see how easily I did that? I've already planned in my head. I've not even looked up anything, and I've already planned a quick little 3-day getaway just based on this deal. And then the notion occurred to me, oh, Providence, Rhode Island. What's near Rhode Island? I mean, Rhode Island is but a speck, so I'm sure I could see whatever I wanted to see in like a couple of hours there. But it's super close to Boston, which is also super close to Salem. Traveling near Halloween time. I've never been to Salem. How could that not be fun to go to Salem during Halloween? So I actually started to piece together if this could be a viable trip with a ticket price of $31 each way, and it almost worked out. The only problem is that trying to get to Salem during this time of year at this late juncture presented a problem as far as accommodations, just because everything was already full and the hotels, were definitely price gouging. And so it just wasn't cost effective. But had this been another time and I'd been able to find lounging, I'd probably be planning a trip to Salem, Massachusetts right now via Providence, Rhode Island, and then I'd get another state checked off my list. I've technically been through Rhode Island, but I don't count it because I didn't get off the bus. And so to me, if I didn't set foot in a place, then I haven't been yet. And Rhode Island is definitely one that I would like to get checked off of my, been to every state's traveler list. So deals is another great way that you can incorporate some adventure. Groupon and Living Social. I had to honestly at one point delete these apps off of my phone just because I was getting a little carried away at one time with the amount of deals that I would buy. This is a great way for you to get deals on spas, but don't just look at the deals where you live. Look at a nearby city that's within a reasonable drive from you, and you can have a reason to go. It's like, okay, maybe you didn't have a reason to visit this city, but if you found a Groupon for this spa, and this cute boutique hotel, then now I have a reason to go to this city just to check it out, and you just don't know what you'll find. Not to mention, they have specific travel deals and getaways offered through both of these sites. My trip to the Azores that I talk about on the blog all the time, that trip was a Groupon getaway that was 100% inclusive of my flight and hotel. None of my excursions, but it was really reasonable priced and one of the best trips, if not the best trip I've ever taken to date still in my life, because it was just such an amazingly beautiful place. And I would have never considered going to the Azores had it not been for this Groupon deal. And so I think that's the beauty of it. Go on it with an open mind. Don't go on it with the intent of, I'm only looking for deals for Costa Rica, or I'm only looking for deals for the Bahamas or for Barbados. Don't go into it so close-minded. Adding adventure when you're already busy does require you to have an open mind and a little bit of flexibility about what you're willing to do. So if your budget allows for it, that's number one. If your budget allows for it, then nothing's holding you back as far as finding something cool or somewhere fun to go to get that adventure added in. But go on there, see what you see. Maybe you find a quick getaway for somewhere you had never considered going before that. I know my first trip to Savannah came from a Living Social deal. Savannah at the time wasn't high on my list. I didn't know much about it. I always associated with it, honestly, with the antebellum era and plantations and slavery, and that just sends me down a whole emotional whirlpool that I didn't equate with vacation fun, if you know what I mean. But found this really cool deal for Savannah, and I was like, well, let me go on TripAdvisor, do a little more research, and I was like, there's a lot of cool stuff to see and do in Savannah and good food. And now it's honestly one of my favorite cities, and I've been 3 different times, but this is all because I took advantage of a deal that was there, because at the time I was just looking for somewhere to go within my budget, within my time frame. So there you have it. You see, it's not all that hard. And that's just a few of the ways that you can add adventure to your already busy lifestyle. And to recap, so number 1, you're going to look at those trips for friends and family, not with disdain or as a waste of your PTO, but as a way to use time that you already were going to take off anyway and make that time off work for you. Number 2, you're going to look at road trips that you already have planned, plan a detour, or just take a more scenic route to somewhere that you were already going to go anyway, because you still get to your destination. You're just going to do something else to add a little more adventure or flavor to the trip. And number 3, look for deals by airlines or services like Groupon, Living Social, or Viator as inspiration to try an activity or go somewhere that you have never been before. If you have any questions, you can head over into the show notes. I will have a link to a post that outlines a lot of these tips, as well as others that we didn't get into on this episode, but perhaps on a later episode, I can expand and go into some of my other adventurous tips. And as always, if you have any questions, suggestions, want to share with me when you implement these tips, or any additional tips of your own for how you add adventure to your busy life, you can send me an email to podcast@outdoorsydiva.com. I look forward to hearing from all of you. And remember, as always, that adventure is a lifestyle. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. Be sure to check out Misadventures of an Outdoorsy Diva blog on outdoorsydiva.com. You can also keep up with me and my adventures, so check out all of my social channels. Find Outdoorsy Diva on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest.